shortly, but I think it's important to start these webinars with a land acknowledgement. And 10KC is based in Toronto, but has teams all over the world. So we do use the Toronto land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the land we are meeting on as the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, which is the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 by the Mississaugas of the Credit. So today we have an amazing innovator spotlight. I think if every day we're hearing from talent leaders, business leaders thinking, how do I keep people connected in a decentralized, hybrid working world? And a lot of people talk about how the genie's out of the bottle, right? We worked from home, we were fully remote. Now we're in some version of all in person or hybrid or remote, but relationships have just been something that has really suffered, which obviously impact culture, retention, new skill development, innovation. And today we're going to talk about those things because 10KC as the all-in-one mentoring, employee connectivity, and skills development platform has partnered with BMO before the pandemic, and fortunately was in play in a really big way throughout the work from home and now hybrid. And for that, we're excited to recognize BMO as our Innovator Spotlight this month. So today we have a special guest. So the webinar will be with Jaime, who's the Director of Talent and Culture, but really pleased to first welcome Victor Tung, who is the US Chief Technology and Operations Officer and Chief Information and Operations Officer for BMO. It's a big title and a lot of responsibilities. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Victor, I think probably for 7 years now, working with Ascend and then innovating through the technology group at BMO. And so thanks for joining us, Victor, for the introduction. I'll pass it to you.
All right. Thank you, David. And thanks for those kind words. A little bit about myself. So I run the tech and ops portfolio for the US, and I also cover capital markets, which is a global portfolio as well. So everything from technology to middle office to back office. So it covers Asia, Europe, US, and Canada as well. So when we look across the tech and ops portfolio, we're talking about 13,000 people. I guess within my area, it's about 6,500. So we've had a great use case and great partnership with 10,000 copies. As David mentioned, we were early adopters in this journey. I still remember when we first started down this, we used the tool. It had a great AI engine in the back, did the matching, and we used to do this in person, and people showed up. And I used to joke that people showed up for the donuts, but that quickly that really wasn't the case. But things really took off for us when COVID hit, and it aligned with us in a couple of fronts. One, adapting to a new digital work environment. We're still kind of retaining our culture and ensuring the touch points with people. So it's been a great platform, and it really accelerated the use. Frankly, we actually had more meetings set up after the fact with COVID hitting, and the uptick has been quite amazing. And it actually becomes a pretty core platform, as you're going to hear more from Jaime, and from a talent, recruitment, alignment, and a critical part of our infrastructure and platform as we kind of move into or actually operating in this hybrid environment. Because a lot of our talent strategy actually revolves around us recruiting all across the US. People operate out of different states, different cities, and even around the world. But this matching algorithm and the ease of use and platform allows people to build culture, allows us to still stay connected, the frequency in which we invest in the ease of use, which is really what makes it happen. So I thank you all for joining the webinar. You're going to turn it over to Jaime. You're going to be in great hands. You're going to hear a lot about this story, and feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a great experience with 10,000 Coffee as much as I do, and I do, and in the future as well too. So Jaime, over to you.
Awesome, thanks, Victor. And yeah, Jaime, would love for you to do a quick intro and kick us off.
Yeah, sure. Excited to be here, number one. And I think that this topic, Dave, we could go on for hours because it is so full, so rich, and clearly a passion topic of mine. So thank you for having me today. And in my portfolio within BMO, I'm specifically responsible for talent transformation initiatives. So anything from how we're personalizing our career experiences for people, how we're automating our talent strategies, how we're really bringing our employer brand to life through our value proposition and our marketing out to candidates and employees. There's a number of different places where 10,000 Coffees has just been the most pleasurable piece of work to engage in. So I'm really happy to be here with the team today.
Well, thank you for that. And I think just before we get started, for those that don't know 10,000 Coffees or 10KC, we're the first all-in-one talent experience platform for anything to do with mentoring, employee connectivity, and skills development. And as a gay entrepreneur myself, diversity and inclusion has been a part of our company since the start, thinking about how do we democratize connections and relationships, whether it's mentoring, skill conversations, because they're not created equal. And if you think about any employee base, if we don't create systems or scalable solutions around relationships, again, in all their different formats, many people will be left behind and you just won't create the culture that matters. And that's really why 10KC was created, is to be the first all-in-one solution. And what you'll see today as part of our Innovator Spotlight is how BMO has been able to not just create connectivity, but also all these different custom experiences. It might be reverse mentoring within the technology group, or it might be women's mentoring within capital markets. But as the all-in-one solution, you'll see how Jaime and team have really taken advantage of modern technology to ensure no colleague is left behind, and to make sure that everyone is able to take advantage of these incredible people that work within the BMO organization that maybe they never would have got to meet with, because as Victor shared, they might be in one office in one state in the US, whereas another colleague might be in Hong Kong. And how do you create that connectivity to drive the highest performing culture? So we're, a big congratulations to Jaime for being our Innovator Spotlight and for all of the terrific impact that she and the team at BMO have made. But maybe to kick things off, I think, what have you heard employees, what are employees looking for in this new hybrid working world that you've now put into place?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big question. Kind of, we could take the whole session just on this because, honestly, I think that people are still figuring it out. And when I talk to employees, depending on who you're talking to, they're in different places with kind of finding meaning in this world of hybrid work. And what it used to mean prior to the pandemic and what it means today are two different things. So I think that, any of us could be looking on the news and social media channels, and every single day there's like a new hot topic popping up, whether that's quiet quitting or kind of how employers are mysteriously tracking employees and all of that kind of stuff. But I think what people are really after and what we're hearing is just being able to have some freedom in the frame, if I kind of think of it really. And so from a value proposition perspective, when we're looking to talk to candidates or employees, it's what is personal for you, what is going to make things work for you, and then how do we put together that right complement of solutions so that you can enjoy hybrid work as it relates to your journey, right? And I think that that's still something people are trying to figure out. But really, we're still not through this phase yet. And I think we have a ways to go before it settles out in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's I love what you said around creating different experiences where people can kind of personalize their journeys with whatever those are. Would love to maybe, just to set context for everyone here, can you maybe just give the elevator pitch on kind of how you were able to do that, or how the BMO 10KC program helps you do that, just so that everyone can kind of, some people might have never even seen the product before.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways that 10,000 Coffees is playing in this space because, if I'm a quieter, more introvert type of person and I'm located in Calgary and meeting new people is hard for me, then I may go something like one-on-one introductions, where I can find somebody who's kind of in the zone of what I'm looking to talk to relative to my personal journey, and we can have a small, intimate conversation. And so that's a way that somebody can build it in if they're feeling anxious or they're a more introverted type of person. And then we have small group chats, right? Where you can get in a room and roll up your sleeves and you're having a kind of coffee chat where you're innovating on a business problem. And so if you're looking to tackle it from a completely different perspective, like Victor said, it doesn't matter whether you're in Calgary or California or Toronto, you're still feeling that cozy kind of, whiteboarding type of atmosphere, whether you're in person or virtual. And then I think that the last piece would be, obviously, in our mentorship programs, you mentioned them already, tremendous uptake in these, and so much appetite for us at BMO to really scale this in the coming year, because it gives another way that somebody can engage in a meaningful way to them if they want to learn something specific to their development needs. So I think that it's really understanding your audience, understanding what you're after, and then kind of choosing from the menu, if you will, in terms of how you deploy things.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think to recap, it's, connectivity looks different for everybody. And so as the all-in-one talent experience platform, Jamie and team have done an incredible job to provide experiences for any type of colleague, whether it's kind of an introverted, colleague who just wants to build their network but would be terrified to go to a networking event, to somebody who's looking to reskill into a modern cybersecurity skill set and is looking to mentor on that. But connectivity is different for all people, which is why an all-in-one solution allows you to cater to all types. And I think on that, it's been incredible to watch the culture kind of mandate evolve and creating that, winning culture strategy. How did you maybe give us a look into what that winning culture strategy was and how it became clear that a scalable, high impact connectivity solution was going to be a critical pillar to make that strategy come to life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that there are several different kind of core strategies that we have at the bank where 10,000 coffees really fit the need, and one of them is definitely our culture. And so, it's been a very strong galvanizing platform in terms of that anchor and that strategy. I also want to say, though, it does anchor very closely to our new ways of working strategies, our wellness strategies. Obviously, you've touched on inclusion, so kind of don't want to leave those out. But, winning culture for us, we've chosen some very specific places that we want to focus our time and energy as a company. And that's getting the right balance of being highly engaged and high performing. And so if you think about 10,000 Coffee from a completely different perspective related to culture, you have the ability to use it in so many ways that you're either kind of demonstrating your culture by connecting with people and living our values. So that could be one-to-one connections, or you could be doing that capability building around empowerment and talking with people around how do you build that capability? What does it mean to you? What are tips and tricks and strategies? And so, we've been able to look at 10,000 Coffees for our culture as a way to really embed and scale in a very configurable and automated way. If, it didn't matter what type of kind of pillar of 10,000 Coffees you were engaging in, the ability to listen to what the employees are feeling and get underneath that is something that all of the parts of 10,000 Coffees really attached to. So it's been really great for us to kind of stay connected to the workforce.
Yeah, I love a lot of, I think so many organizations have launched new ways of working, or they've launched new values. And the challenge is they don't have a call to action that actually allows colleagues on scale to achieve those things, right? So it's like collaboration or relationships, but go do this on your own versus here's structured programs or offerings you can opt into and do for every colleague. How did you find that with 10KC in terms of how you took some of those kind of key new ways of working and actually tied them to programs that could happen on scale without the kind of manual intervention. And I think about office hours as one.
Yeah, it was a really big part of our upfront implementation with each of the businesses, because what we said to them is that this is not additive, right? So to your point, take a look at everything you're doing today where it's labor intensive, it's manual, you can't get it at scale. It doesn't feel kind of that connected, personalized experience. And really think about how you're taking 10,000 copies to make that happen, not just adding it as another program in your bucket list. And so that conversation with the businesses was really effective upfront in terms of the way they planned and implemented it. So, with our branches, they would talk about, they used to do market visits in a certain way, and now they could do them in an entirely new way. And so it wasn't about, well, I'm going to do market visits and then I'm going to do 10,000 copies. It has to be about, how does 10,000 copies be the way that we do market visits? So that has been a really strong part of the success in embedding it, is making sure we're stripping out Excel spreadsheets and only being able to get to 50 people at a time. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, the Excel spreadsheets, we always like joke with our clients, and many on this call, is think about all those programs that you're running on Excel spreadsheets. And I think with the best intentions, manual matching like that has a lot of bias. But to Jamie's point, it might only reach 50 employees, and it's actually a ton of work. Whereas you can actually use systems and technology to increase reach by 10, 100 times even. And I think that kind of goes to one of the questions that was stemmed from something that the audience came to, which is around, BMO has nearly 50,000 colleagues all around the world. It's fully decentralized. How has connecting teams over the past couple of years changed for you?
Yeah, I think that we've done a really great job of laying infrastructure that's going to carry us forward. And again, Victor was mentioning it early on that it started pre-pandemic. So if you think about our learning platforms, for example, we pivoted to a format where it didn't matter if you were reading an article on the subway or you were in a classroom. It's a mobile anywhere type of experience. And so, that experience is now very scalable to anybody, whether you're in Florida, US, Canada. At the same time, we've been looking at making sure that we build the capabilities of our leaders to leverage the technology in a way that it hits the mark with people. So how do you, in a virtual setting, in a coffee conversation, really get at that empathy and connecting with somebody in a meaningful way? How do you, as a leader, kind of pivot your approach, because you can't see sometimes my facial expressions, maybe I'm uneasy about something, and really that technology has allowed us to make sure that we build the empathy into it in a really strong fashion. And I think that the other piece I would talk about is we really want to make sure that as we progress in being a digitally enabled bank, that these things feel easy for people to use, because we know that adoption is one of the biggest challenges with technology launches. You can have a suite of tools, if people can't use it or it's complex or any of those things, it's basically dead in the water. So how do we really work with platforms like 10,000 Coffees and put a sustainable focus on maintenance, making sure that it's fresh and easy for people to use? So those are just a few of the things that I would highlight.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're going to launch another poll question on that note, which is around connectivity strategies, which is really at the heart of all these different programs that Jamie and her team have been able to innovate. And as you're thinking about this connectivity strategy, I thought we would just draw everybody's attention to this like staggering stat. I think a lot of people are like, why do I need to build networks for that more introverted colleague who's in one office that may never meet a lot of people, versus just letting them go do it on their own? And what we'd share is that networks are a top predictor of performance. So in an economic time like now, where we need to cut travel and cut a lot of those costs, we still can't forgo relationships, because performance will be directly related to that. And you'll see here that even more than experience, personality, cognitive ability, and education. It's whether people have relationships. And so using technology to scale those relationships and networks is critical. And I think on that note, like what kind of advice would you have, Jaime, for people on this call who are thinking about the importance of networks in this, tough and uncertain economic time? Like, what would be some of your advice on how they can get wins by using things like technology?
Yeah, I think the graph that you've got on the slide is really impactful because when we look at networking and the impact it has, if I think about mental health and well-being, we know that networks are a strong place where people feel included, they feel cared for, and that's kind of one piece. And then you really go through the other pillars that are in this slide to hammer at, how can I perform better by connecting with somebody and learning something different that I can apply to my job. So I think that this piece around the power of networks is really true kind of pre-post pandemic. And I think the wonderful thing about 10,000 Coffees is it supports me in my journey, kind of given what my personal interests are. So if I want to learn, and I have poked my head into technology office hours, just to get an understanding, like, wow, listen to these conversations. I'm meeting a ton of new people that I would have never been connected to in a really simple way, because all I do is see an email, hit register, and away I go. And it's really built on my profile. So again, it's not cookie cutter. And I go back to the comments around what are people looking for? I don't want one size fits all. I want to be able to think about what's right for me and kind of have something that's helping me and guiding me, which is the AI of 10,000 Coffees, to kind of get into these conversations or these networks in kind of the way that it works for me.
I think you have well said on all of that, right? Where like connectivity is directly tied to performance, and everyone's going to get those in different ways. And I think I've heard from many colleagues at BMO, right? Even in the interview process, people are asking, "How do I get connected to leaders?" Our people are open to it, and now with the BMO program, it's democratized. It's not just for those 50 chosen few. It's actually open to anyone to be able to self-serve, but still be personalized. And we just got the results from the pullback from the poll,
Yeah.
which is pretty interesting, right? Where
Yeah.
a lot of 10% using Excel spreadsheets, but 25% of people have the HR talent team manually matching. And I think those anyone who has a survey and then they're using Excel, definitely email us. We have a retirement home that we joke at 10KC to retire all of those once you can actually use something that removes bias, but also increases impact. And I think the 33% staggering, and I'm going to get you to comment on this, Jaime, but employees are tasked to find their own mentors and connections. And what I would share on that is men are 12 times less likely to meet with a female colleague than a male colleague, 12 times less likely. And so for colleagues who say, go build your own connections, you're actually, the female colleagues, just as from a gender perspective, are 12 times less likely to get connections with a lot of people inside of an organization. And so you're already creating a ton of bias, which is counter to DE&I strategies. And so what I would love to hear from you is like, how have you seen, what's your advice, I guess, for all those people that are tasking colleagues to go figure this out on their own?
Well, I think it's because it's just gotten so hard, like so complex to try and do it in a way that's consistent, in a way that they're really hitting the mark for what somebody personally wants. And, that's part of the kind of having everybody in different parts of the world and in different roles with different aspirations. So, when it really gets hard for a leader to go, like, I really want to help you, but like, wow, I don't even know where to start. That's when the challenge comes in. And, I know with colleagues that have joined my team in the past 18 months, I would typically have a list of people in my network. I would have kind of sent them off to meet. And you're limited because if I don't know somebody and somebody else has joined the bank in a different office, then, well, how do I not know what I don't know to get someone to the right place? So if you take all of that and then you say, okay, when you join, kind of list out what you're interested in. Where do you want to meet people? How do you want to have conversations? And then things are just coming to them. I mean, it's fantastic. And I was actually just in my coffee chat this morning for my community, and met somebody that I wouldn't have had the kind of ability to do it. So when you think about that from a mentoring perspective, the ability to be matched with somebody based on your profile, and it really takes out a lot of the kind of male, female, kind of, you know, generational differences, demographic differences. The reverse mentoring program is a perfect example. I can be you know, a newer employee in a company, but at a senior level, matched with somebody who's been here for 10 years. And those things are done for you. So I think that it really does have a lot of power in the democratization and making sure that people feel comfortable and supported in getting to relationships that will help them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think so oftentimes organizations think, oh, it's like expensive to use a technology solution, but what's more expensive is having all of your employees having to figure this out on their own, right? Like that new hire example that you mentioned, the manager's trying to sort things through, the HR partner's trying to sort it out, and ultimately it just doesn't happen because everyone gets busy. Whereas what Jamie just described is how she's built her program, where a new hire goes on to the BMO 10KC program, sets interests, goals, topics, career paths, diversity networks, and it just comes to their inbox after that. And so there's no longer this expectation of, well, I need to wait for my manager to do it. It's actually helping colleagues customize their journey. And so maybe we'll go to this next question, which is around how has it paid off? Like, I think everyone on here, we have to recognize that the tough economic times, and everyone's trying to find, you know, budget cuts wherever they might be. How has this program actually paid off? What have been some of the results?
The results for us, and it's interesting because we're a year in review now of kind of our enterprise partnership. And it's definitely surpassed the benchmarks that we were originally talking about when we started on this journey. So it's really fantastic to see the impact that it's had. You know, I think we thought originally it would be 35% adoption, and we're in the 40s. And we still have communities that have only been kind of available for a couple of months, so they're still in their implementation phase. We definitely have a number of Excel spreadsheets that we have sent to your graveyard, and I think that you know, for all of us program managers in the background, and I was one of them that had to do this manually, it's just so life-changing to see how you spend the thoughtful time to configure the system in a way that is going to work for you and the needs of your employees, and to see it take off has been really remarkable. I don't think that there's one team that we've engaged with in any of our business that have said that they've had any struggles in getting adoption, any struggles with people kind of feeling that it's having an impact on them, whether that's personally in their development, whether that's them feeling included and a part of the culture, or whether they're really stepping up their game to contribute to business performance by innovating and having those collaborative discussions. It's really hitting the mark, every pillar of the 10,000 Coffees platform, throughout all of the communities that we have today. So, you know, a little bit of time up front to kind of configure and be thoughtful about the right way to do things has been a big payoff for us.
Yeah, I think it's something that we talk to clients about every day, right? Where they often have Excel spreadsheets, or just every new hire, the hundreds or thousands of people they've hired in the last 2 years, are just hacking through the directory trying to find this, or they're just not doing it, which results in usually churn in the first 2 years. And so it kind of, you touched on a question that's come up a few times in the chat, which is around like metrics on the employee's response to the program and how connected they feel with the organization in a hybrid or remote way. Maybe talk to us about, you know, have you seen that, or has it just been another thing that employees have had to do?
No, we've definitely seen the feedback in spades. And I think that the feedback has come in, again, probably our initial benchmarks, whether it's the office hour functionality, whether it is mentoring programs or one-on-one. And so it would be, you know, really something that I think has been very, I think that it's been very meaningful for people to be able to engage with, and they're happy to share their feedback about feeling connected, that the bank is doing something to help them live the experience, contribute to the performance, and achieve kind of their career experience and aspirations. I think that, you know, if I think about capital markets with their mentoring program, for example, I mean, they scaled up to over 300 participants in their first cohort, which was not something they had been able to do in the past. So they scaled it, and then they had over a 95% kind of rating in terms of people's feedback, whether that was the mentor or the mentee, saying this has had impact and value to me. And so, you know, normally when you launch some sort of program like this, you're thinking, you know, high 80s or mid 80s would be great. And we're kind of exceeding our metrics all over the place. So that was one fantastic example. And I think the other one was, you know, if we think of the people and culture of the group that I'm in, I think our adoption right now is somewhere up in the 75% range. And our initial benchmarks were, I think, 30 to 35. So,
Wow.
So basically out of the water in terms of, you know, whether you're participating in a mentoring program or one-on-one connections, the adoption has been strong right across the board.
Yeah, that brings up a good point around the different types of offerings. Because Jaime, I think a lot of people are just solving for mentoring, right? They're like, let's just get a mentoring solution that can do reverse mentoring, but you are much broader than that. Like, what would be your advice to people who are evaluating whether to do kind of a mentoring app or an all-in-one experience platform? What would be your advice on kind of why you went with the latter?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say that when you can combine things, the power of the experience and the impact it has on a person is so much greater. And I think that one of the biggest challenges out there today is that there's just too many technology integrations to try and do that if you're getting kind of one-off pieces all over the place. And so when you find something that touches on every aspect of that connectivity, your ability to kind of just drive it forward and really get it to hum in your environment is so much greater. So I think that, you know, every group or every company I've talked to really does have that challenge of, you know, we have a system over here and it doesn't talk to the system over here. And the more you layer in one-offs, the more difficult it gets to manage. So when you think about implementing something where it touches all of these pillars and it can be configured based on the person's preferences, you're just opening the door for them in a much better user experience than if I have to go 5 places to do something.
Yeah, well said. Because it's even, we've seen it at BMO, right? A new hire probably maybe doesn't want mentoring. They might just want to do connectivity and grow their network. But then someone who's in capital markets ready for their next role might want to opt into the Women in Capital Markets career mentoring program. And so if Jaime had to launch different apps for each of those, it just wouldn't work. And so, I mean, it's a testament to how you're creating these customized journeys for any colleague.
Yeah, I think that we talked early on about BMO being decentralized, and I really want to take a moment to call out the success of all of the program managers that we have working in their individual communities, because they've had a massive part to play in making sure that for their specific group and knowing their needs, that they were taking the configuration part and really fine-tuning it to what would knock it out of the park. Just taking a moment to call out all of the program managers, because we at the enterprise level set the frame, and basically the configuration and the ability to get at these different aspects that you have on screen now. They were able to say, you know, let's dial this one up, let's keep this one lower end based on kind of what they were seeing in their environment. And the configuration part for us in kind of being able to play with the mix of this has been beautiful. It's really allowing us to be very targeted in terms of what we focus on based on the needs of the employees in that certain area. So again, back to that freedom in the frame concept, the configuration of the platform has been fantastic.
Okay, so I've got a tough question for you here because everybody, and we have a poll question up here as well, but so
Yeah.
people in your role, all they're thinking of in their back pocket, whether they say it or not, is, well, our leaders are so busy and our managers are so busy. And if I launch this, they're going to get bombarded with things. But the reality is culture doesn't change without leaders. So you need them to be involved. So it's this kind of like tough paradigm, right? Of you need them to be involved because culture will not change without them, but they're busy. And so the tough question I want you to talk to is how this platform has landed with those leaders. Like candidly, what have they said, and how has it helped them scale their mandates? Has it made it more work for them? But how have leaders actually been able to take advantage of the various programs?
Yeah, I actually don't think that's I mean, if that's the toughest you got, then I'm going to be. Our leadership team is really, really keen on being engaged with their groups. And so if you think about how can I reach my employees in a kind of casual, not intimidating way to foster a conversation or meet new people or have people get experience to me and what makes me tick. I think that our leadership team has really been supportive of this because it is a little bit of a work smart, not hard mentality where, you know, those leaders are going to be busy whether or not kind of they're focusing their attention on trying to just book one-on-one coffees all over the place, but working smart when that's happening for you, it just makes your life a little bit easier. So I guess I would flip the narrative on that a bit. And I think that, you know, again, you would typically see a leader in a town hall or, you know, a very formal setting. And it's a little bit intimidating if there's hundreds of people and you don't get a sense for who that person is. So when you get in an office hour and you've got a leader like Victor who basically just says, hey guys, how's it going? And what do you want to talk about today? And there's an authenticity to it. It's not scripted. It's not a presentation. It really makes people feel like they're working with leadership team and it feels very comfortable. It feels very safe. And I love kind of the way our leaders have adapted to using the program. I think it's been remarkable.
Yeah, and I think it's if you think of all those different programs that we were speaking to before, what's been amazing to see is that you've actually allowed leaders to participate in any of those as a participant or also through group matching, like you just described with Victor. Our group matching feature we call office hours. So it allows leaders to take a template. The template could be a fireside chat or a career ask me anything or insight into a skill area that leader's really pushing. Talk to us about some of these stats here and how leaders have been able to now automate and systematically get in front of the right talent.
I think the one comment I'll add before I go to these stats that I just want to make sure that I also kind of mention related to how our leaders are engaging with the platform is that because it's so highly configurable, if I'm a leader and I'm working in finance, for example, and it's quarter end, I have the ability through the system to kind of say, you know what, I need a quiet moment. And so I'm going to have a window where maybe things just slow down for me so that I can do what I need to do. And I think that that's important for our leaders today to make sure that, you know, there are going to be those moments where people have to kind of dial it up or dial it down based on business needs. And the ability to do that in probably a matter of a couple hours by configuring the system has also been something that, you know, leaders feel like it can be customized to what is going to work for me. So I do want to touch on that. You know, the office hour stats that you have up, I mean, if you think about the topics that we're hitting in office hours, it's such a beautiful blend between people feeling that they get to have conversations around careers and hybrid work and what's working for them and what's not working for them. Lots of great conversations on diversity, equity, inclusion. So how are we increasing our allyship, and how are we kind of making sure that our commitment to an inclusive society and our workforce? So lots of topics related to that. And then our winning culture, lots of different innovation discussions around what do we have to do differently? Where do we fine tune? What are the problems people are seeing? And so the stats there are really probably, I think, early stats, and they're actually just going to grow in the coming year with people now feeling comfortable and getting the vibe of how this all works. They're starting to even get deeper with the, I feel like I can just show up and have a conversation and it's really going to provide value to me. So it's been a really strong platform for us and really easy to kind of set up and launch at scale.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it brings me back to a conversation I remember we had with you and Karen Collins and a few of the other colleagues at BMO, where you had these new ways of working, and I think this might be relevant to a lot of people on the call, where you have then expectation for leaders to have conversations around these new values or new ways of working, but the how is usually just choose your own adventure, which what gets measured gets done. So usually kind of it goes away. How did you find this functionality help you actually scale how leaders get in front of talent to like activate those new ways of working?
Yeah, and I have to say for leaders, I mean, the last couple of years has also been a bit of a challenge because there are some leaders that are further along in their journey of adapting to this type of environment. And so, it's not as intuitive or natural to sit with a group of people and talk about, mental health or diversity. Like that's kind of, you have to recognize that you have a spectrum of leaders, and how do you make them all feel comfortable that they can show up in a good way and be there for their employees when it has meaning and it has impact. So I think that the authenticity and the psychological safety of office hours, with being able to have that unscripted conversation, really means that a leader doesn't feel like they have to have all the answers, that they can show them their true selves and say, well, what does somebody else think? Like, maybe this is an area I'm not great in, or maybe this is an area that you guys can tell me what's on your mind. So I think that two-way dialogue for leaders, and the ability for them to show up in a way that's true to them, has been really great as well.
No, that's awesome. And this is a great quote that we'll leave on here from Victor, who you all met in the introduction, around the power of giving leaders tools and not just having kind of a one size fits all solution that you expect everyone to participate in. And just kind of going back, I'm just looking at one of the questions from the group that's come in is just around, and you kind of talked about this a bit, but would love to double click on it, which is around what percentage of colleagues participated in. How does that compare to other learning programs that you're rolling out? Like I imagine so maybe speak to that. And I think the second question, actually we'll start there and I'll go to the next one.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that the engagement with 10,000 Coffees is either at par or higher than some of the other programs that we've rolled out. And again, it's the configuration, the scalability, and the ease of use for me to just go in and kind of set up my profile and go, right? I think that there's a winning combination there. The other one that's a really strong comparable platform for us would be our BMO with our learning. And, BMO is the same essence. So when you can kind of create that winning blend of kind of user experience, personalization, and scalability, that's when I think platforms are more successful in terms of their long-term viability within a company. So I think that, we've had a few that, they haven't gotten the traction that we wanted. And sometimes it's a matter of people feeling like they're overwhelmed with too many things, right? And we talked about kind of not doing one-offs all over the place. And there's other, reasons why the adoption just cannot be right moment, right time, or not connected to strategy. So you have to have an organization that understands why this is going to give them the impact against their strategy. And that's a really big core as well.
Yeah, it's a really, I think to your point earlier, right, is 10KC scales existing strategies to replace and shift efforts to have more reach and have more engagement and get better data. It's not to add like another activity necessarily. So like there's usually efforts where it's like build your network, whether it's different talent programs or onboarding, and there's just no tools for it. And so those are the strategies where you've done such a great job to insert the different programs to scale those, where even that 300 participants in the first cohort of that mentoring program, I think if I remember correctly, in previous years, they actually weren't even sure, and this is pretty common, but you're not sure, are people joining it? How are the matches going? Are they like guided through the different experiences? And of course, you're able to stand that up and launch it in such record time with your colleagues in that group. I think switching gears to, January is around the corner. I know it's November, so it's a bit early to talk about that, but January is around the corner, and then come February, you really get into the diversity calendar with, Black History Month, International Women's Day, or Women's Heritage Month, all the way every month for the next kind of 8 months. And the diversity calendar is a really important time where mentoring and networking needs to be activated. And so on that note, let's talk about your ERGs. And so some organizations, for everyone on the call, you might call them ERGs or BRGs or affinity networks. It's really your diversity networks at the organization. How has your 10KC program helped you activate those networks? And talk to us about how it's helped those networks.
Yeah, our ERGs are such a remarkable kind of success story for us, and the growth in our ERGs in the last year, I think it's gone from 7,000 or 8,000 to like 17,000. So we've had such strong growth, and we have new ERGs kind of popping up all the time. So I think right now we're actually launching one for parents in terms of, how are you feeling as a parent trying to survive in these crazy times. When we think about the community we launched for ERGs, this is probably one of our first attempts at horizontal. And we actually had to do a little bit more kind of like, how are we going to configure this up front so it's really going to get embedded and scale in a good way. And the challenge for us was that there were so many different people who wanted to get at this from an ERG or diversity perspective that we almost worried about overwhelming our system if it was happening on 5 different layers and not done in a good way horizontally. So the configuration part was a good exercise for us and a lot of learning. But, prior to 10,000 coffees, we would have bandwidth issues in terms of trying to get people into calls. And when you've got kind of people dispersed all over the place, that can be pretty tricky. 10,000 coffees has removed all of that. And so whether you want to go big, whether you want to go small, whether you want to target certain groups, you now have the ability to be able to kind of play with the configuration to hit the audience that you think you want to have for a particular conversation. So it's been really powerful for this team because, again, when you've got kind of a group of ERGs that are based, in Chicago and flat focused on a certain segment, they may struggle, right, to connect with a different ERG that's, let's say, up in Canada and focus on a completely different topic. Whereas now you have the power to bring those two together and to learn from each other and understand kind of, what are they doing in their segments that's driving better representation, better education and awareness, kind of whatever dialogue you want to have. So this has been a really kind of great piece to see it become embedded in. And I think that in the coming year, when we look at development programs, specifically with diverse career programs, these are going to be a place that, we can see our ERGs and our diversity teams really being able to pick up and run with the scalability of it all.
Yeah, and maybe like for those that don't know that, maybe double clicking on kind of what's the how of how the 10KC solution helps you pick up the scalability of those initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the probably the traditional use case we've been talking about the whole conversation, right? You've got a very select population that you're really trying to help develop career paths and kind of, build diverse learning.
So one of the last questions I've got is like employer value prop. And I know even in this economic time, top talent is still incredibly important to keep and to attract. Does 10KC help with that, or what's the conversation with top talent?
Yeah, I think that it helps right through the entire life cycle from an employer brand perspective. So, we talked about it through the conversation. If you're looking to join a company, and sometimes joining a company that has numbers like ours, where it's 46,000 people and it's a North American footprint, I mean, that can actually be a little intimidating. But when you feel like you have something that helps you kind of onboard into the culture, into the company in a way where you feel welcomed and supported, right from the moment you join BMO, 10,000 Coffees is at play, right? And then if we think about, I'm 10 years into the company and, maybe I've been in the same group forever and I'm looking for a change. The ability to say to somebody, why don't you go learn about marketing, or why don't you go learn about product operations? I can go into 10,000 Coffees and click a few of those interests and then open a whole new world of maybe that's something different I want to try in my career. So it really plays into the attraction and the retention space. And it aligns quite tightly to our values. So if you think about why does somebody join BMO, we're a purpose-driven organization, and you feel that in every conversation that you're in, and somebody showing up in a caring, compassionate way, really focused on, being after the same thing, either with a business problem that you're trying to solve or network building to grow your career. It really helps people feel connected to the experience, and our leaders are able to role model and share good stories of how they see things happening. And it's in a very authentic, kind of intimate experience. So this has got a very strong correlation to brand, and really look forward to seeing that happen in the next coming years.
Well, I know we're somehow at time, but I just wanted to, from the entire 10KC team, congratulate Jaime, you and the whole team for building such a scalable way to help people build connectivity no matter where they are, which has huge impacts on your inclusion, your culture, retention, and engagement. So congratulations for making that innovation and doing it in such an incredible way. Just to wrap up, definitely you can find Jaime on LinkedIn and say hello directly. And for those, there is an SHRM certificate as part of this. So feel free to download that if you're doing your certification. And if you do want to see a demo, especially as you think of those key diversity moments next year, just go to this link here. Somebody from our team, one of our solutions experts, will get in touch. But Jaime, congratulations again. I love seeing the success stories every day. That's what keeps us going. And you're certainly creating tens of thousands of those. So congratulations, and thanks to everybody for joining us.
Thank you.